So as we mentioned, there's phonics instruction, but there's also going down into that deeper level. So there's the phonics instruction where you're starting at A and going to Z alphabetically. Well, that is often done. And when you do that, you're not giving students the opportunity to use their ability to sound out words very quickly, because there's only a minimal number of words that can be created with even the first 6 letters in the alphabet. But if you do it systematically, then that allows the student to have more access to using this knowledge that they're learning as they're going along. And I realize that we're teaching letters to kids, in pre-K, kindergarten, when some of them aren't ready to learn how to read. But if we do it in a systematic way, those that are have that access to starting to be able to figure out how to put those words together with the sounds that they're learning.
In all our instruction, whether it's in anything that we're doing in literacy, we really want to have a direct, explicit, systematic methods for teaching, and also in a I do, we do, you do way, a very explicit manner. So when we think about what explicit means, it means there's nothing to chance. We're being very explicit about what students are learning. We're giving them a model and modeling it for them. We're giving them lots of practice with the opportunities for feedback from the teacher, for error correction, guided practice, and then independent practice. And I recently, Sharon Vaughn and Joe Torgeson wrote a wonderful article for the American Federation of Teachers. And what they said is oftentimes what we have is we have a practice gap, that we are teaching kids, but oftentimes they don't have opportunities for that repeated practice. We know for typically developing students, if they decode an unknown or unfamiliar word in 1 to 4 exposures, they typically can store that in that visual word form area right back here, and it becomes a sight word as if known by sight as soon as they see it. But certainly we know we don't have all typically developing students in our classroom, and so they need lots of repeated practice. So one thing I think I would stress is oftentimes we're teaching these phonics skills or even phonemic awareness skills in isolation, but then they need to be transitioned into opportunities for repeated practice. So for in phonics, it makes me think about decodable text, making a direct connection between the skill that's been taught in phonics and then the opportunity to practice that phonics skill repeatedly in decodable text. And for me as a teacher, it tells me whether students have transferred that skill from that isolated instruction to connected text when we see words like that are surrounded by other words. So in everything we do, we want to be direct and explicit and systematic with kids. Learning our language is, takes many years to do. And certainly if we're not direct and explicit, it takes a lot longer. So I definitely encourage that.
And then also not just applying that phonics instruction to reading with the decodable text, we also want to apply it to spelling, because that's going to help strengthen the connection, right? Between phonics, the reading, and spelling, because they're all interconnected, and it's going to help the students cement that in their visual or the orthographic mapped representation of the word.
Whatever we're decoding, we should be encoding or spelling. And think about if I were to put up, flash the word here, onomatopoeia, I'm guessing that most of you could read that word. But if I took that word away quickly, maybe you can put it in the chat, would you be able to spell it? Let's see what they say. What do they say, Kathryn?
I'm going to spell it wrong, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone else would throw it in there, but spelling requires a much deeper analysis of a word, knowing the graphemes and phonemes all the way through, right? So if we can spell a word, we can read a word, but conversely, if we can read a word, can we spell it? Oftentimes for those more complex words like onomatopoeia or some others, we're not very good at spelling them. So it means that we have an incomplete word form back here. We don't have it complete yet. So spelling is absolutely essential. So when we think about a phonics lesson, we want to make sure that we're including warm-ups and phonological awareness, and we're teaching the phonics skill. We're giving lots of practice and guided feedback, opportunities for students to practice that in connected text, but also spelling. And then, of course, no matter what we're doing, we're always asking students to tell us about what they've read, because that's always the goal of reading. No matter what we're reading, we want to make sure that we're asking comprehension questions, because that's the goal, right? To if you're even if you're reading decodable text, which kids love to read because they're successful and they can read it, we always want to make sure that we're asking comprehension questions after.
Yes, of course.